So, I was scrolling through Facebook last night, as I often do when I've finished going through videos for the day, and I came across a few interesting things. Now, first of all, I want to address this, and if the person who made this post is watching, I would like to make a request of you, and that is, in future, rather than watching my videos, taking something I've said almost verbatim and then sharing it on Facebook as if it is your own opinion, maybe in future you could actually share the link for my video and say, here is something that Ninchi True Crime said, and I think it is a good point. It actually helps my channel if you share my videos in these groups. It doesn't help my channel when you go into these groups, quote me almost verbatim, and claim that this is something that you came up with. This is the second time I've seen this happen on Facebook. Now, I didn't screenshot the first time, but I have screenshot this time round, and next time I'm going to share it in a video, and I'm going to share the person's name also. I will not be erasing it because I find it quite rude and quite offensive. And you may not think of it this way, but you are actually stealing from me by presenting my opinion almost verbatim on this group and taking credit for yourself rather than actually referencing my video and saying, here is a point that this creator made. You are stealing potential views from me. If you like what I say in my videos and you think that what I've said is something that is worth sharing on these Facebook groups, you could, as I said, share the link for my video, share the thing that I've said, and give me credit for my own words rather than doing it this way. I'm a small channel. I work extremely hard to get these videos out, and I don't earn a lot of money from my videos. So rather than taking credit for something I've said, you could be actually helping me out and sharing my videos instead and actually telling people this is where the information comes from. Now, moving on from that, but I was a little bit annoyed. In fact, I was more than a little bit annoyed. I do want to say, I want to shout out and say thank you to the subscriber who did make a comment under this person's post, something along the lines of, I see that you watched Ninchi's video. So thank you for that. I do appreciate when people stand up for me. Now, in the interests of giving credit where credit is due, the whole point of this video is over something else that I saw on one of the Facebook groups last night when I was just browsing through. Now, obviously, it was quite evident when we watched that CBC interview with Janie that things had been improved upon on the property since the children had gone missing. So, there's no arguing that. But some clever person actually took the time to do a comparison with the area around the swings, looking at the video and looking at early on images that were shared by CBC of the swing area. And what this person pointed out is extremely significant. And I will go into it shortly, but I think it's easier to go into it in context and showing you the images at the same time. But from seeing that, it made me dig a little deeper and have a look at a few other images, which made me question a few more things. Now, for most of the things that I'm questioning, there are accompanying clips to do with things that Janie has said, and I'm going to address them first. But there's also a few images that I noticed that I have questions about. But I certainly feel that from this initial discovery regarding the children's little playhouse and the woodshed, that has basically shown me that Janie was lying. And I'll explain it as we go along.
Next thing you know, my dog started barking and the kids were out in the yard. Now you can see there's 2 swings where the kids play. My bedroom is right there. I heard the kids. This is where the kids' swings are. This is where they always played.
And so that's where
I heard them. And I can hear everything in that trailer.
Now, I had been meaning to come back to this anyway, because when I watched this video, it bothered me that the electrical tape on the swings was brand new and that the timber on the swings was brand new. And what made me really curious was the way that the electrical tape was wrapped around the nylon rope underneath the swings, because it made me question if they were adequately knotted, in which case would they take the weight of a child. But everything about the swings seemed wrong to me. It all seemed like they were brand new. They certainly had not been out in the weather, and they certainly hadn't been out in the winter weather. I mean, you can see the grain at the end of that swing. The grain is exposed. This is a temperate climate, and it is the end of winter. So were they the swings that had been there, then basically I would expect to see some sort of weathering. Now, this isn't what was actually pointed out on Facebook. This is me meaning to come back and look at this for a while, and now that I've seen this image on Facebook, it fits perfectly with the rest of this video. So certainly it seems to me that the swing looks brand new. Both swings look brand new. I mean, that you just have to look at the way that the electrical tape is already unravelling. That wouldn't have lasted a week in cold, misty, rainy, snowy weather. Now, I don't know if the person who posted the image on Facebook looked at these images because they did the same as me and they looked at these swings and went, something doesn't seem right here. Or if they were just looking through images and didn't even think of it in connection with the swings. But I'm going to keep going with these images right now. Now, I do want to point out too that that sort of cheap nylon rope is going to perish within a matter of months. It's not the sort of rope that you would use to make swings with. And I think too, when I look at it, it also appears to me that there's been no settling of the rope either. There's been no weight put on that rope at any point in time. It is still very perfectly tied right up against the beam. Like I said, it's a cheap nylon rope. Basically, that kind of cheap nylon rope stretches. So had it had children swinging on it, you would see a bit of a gap at the bottom there between where it was tied to the beam and then where it goes down to the swing. Also, there's no fraying on the end of the ropes. There's no knot there on the rope to stop it from fraying. And even these nylon ropes will fray a little bit at the ends. I mean, maybe it's been melted at the ends to stop it from fraying, But, I mean, it's hard to tell in this picture. There doesn't appear to be any discoloration either. It is extremely difficult to melt the ends of these ropes without ending up with black spots on the ends. But the other thing that stands out here is that there, in the middle between the two swings, you can see distinct lines on the timber where it hasn't weathered. Maybe that was an old swing that was there, but definitely there was something in the middle there where it's basically not weathered. So could there have maybe just been a single swing here? I still have my doubts, and you're going to see why in just a minute. Unless you've already seen it on Facebook, then you know where I'm headed with this. So, on the off chance that the person who discovered this is watching, kudos to you and a huge shout out for actually spotting this. So, on the right hand side is another screenshot from the interview with Janie. You can see the swings, and you can see the nicely gravelled path towards the gate. Now, on the left-hand side is a screenshot from a CBC article from within the first couple of days after the children went missing. Now, have a look at the location where the swings should be. There's no way any child was swinging there prior to those children going missing, because you have a massive wood pile alongside the little cubby house. And if you look at it, you can see that it goes right to the top of the slide. It is level with the top of the slide. Not only that, it goes so far across the path that it would reach beyond the spot where that swing is that Janie is currently holding. You can also see behind the wood pile, there's no gravel. It's just that heavy clay. And I'll come back to that heavy clay in a minute too. So, Janie claims that she could see the children playing from her RV. She could hear the children playing from her RV. And that she would watch them on the swings because they were always on the swings. Because even if there was one or two swings there, the wood pile would actually mean that the swings wouldn't even be able to hang far enough down to be hanging properly. The swings would hit the wood pile before they were actually full length. So kudos to the person who noticed that there was a wood pile next to the cubby house, because you've just proven that Janie is a complete and utter liar. It also appears to me that on the side of the now woodshed, that there seems to be more clutter there also, which would make that a really challenging spot for children to be playing. Now, when you look at Janie's RV, my question is, given we're talking a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, given the location of the windows on that RV, I'm not sure that she would be able to see them playing in other areas of that garden. Because once you get them like behind that cubby house or, behind that fence, you're not going to see them. But she claims that she used to be able to watch them through the windows of from her RV, and that they were always on the swings, swinging. So there is your first lie. Now, I am going to say that when I saw that post on Facebook, I was almost going to ask the person if they had photoshopped the image, because I could not remember seeing a wood pile next to the cubby. And I went back through the photos that I had from early on in the case. And sure enough, there was no wood pile next to the cubby. But then I went, and their image, you could see the edge of the title of the article. So I searched for an article with the words that I could see and came up with the CBC article, and bingo, there's your wood pile. Meaning that even within the first couple of days, they basically moved the wood pile, and they also removed all that scrap wood that you can see on the other side of the cubby up against the fence. Now, I don't know if that was done for the benefit of the media or Child Protection Services, because obviously the picture you see on the left is what investigators would have first seen when they first attended the property. And yet, within a day or two, they have removed the wood pile, removed the big pile of timber that was up against the fence. And you know what the most ridiculous thing about this is? If Janie had actually said this same story to the RCMP, well, they would have images from, well, they would hopefully have images from when the children first went missing. They would know that there's no way she could have been watching those children swinging from her RV the morning that they allegedly went missing. So by coming out publicly and making these very, very public claims, she's made herself look really guilty with RCMP. Because I'm sure they would have watched that interview. And they were probably sitting there going, "You're kidding me, right?" I can just imagine a detective going, "Okay, I've got to have a look at the photos that were taken of the property on the day that the children went missing, because I'm pretty certain I saw a wood pile there." Like, you can't, in a case like this, come out and publicly lie on social media when a case is being investigated, because you can bet that investigators are watching social media and they're going to see your lies. Now, I know when I made the comment about the deck having been improved when I was doing the review of her interview, that someone was like, "Well, you know, that's the time of year when people do their home improvements and they do fix things up." Well, they've done a heck of a lot of fixing up at a huge expense as far as I'm concerned. Now, we heard that Daniel had been dropped back to one shift a week. We heard that allegedly he had forgot to put his tax return in on time, so they'd lost the $1,900 baby bonus. We'd heard that he was too stressed to go back to work. It appears that Janie doesn't work. She has said she's pretty much a hermit and spends all day in her RV. And yet, they've got new timber for all these areas. They have built steps up into that woodshed. Not only that, they have reframed around the doorway of that woodshed, and they've stained the entire thing. When you look at the condition on the left and then the condition on the right, Either they've gone in, they've done some serious work and they've sanded back the timber, or they have replaced the timber on the outside and they've stained it. And yeah, sure, maybe it only cost them the cost of the stain and the sanding discs and the wood for the steps. But like I said, Daniel apparently isn't working, Janie isn't working. They've rebuilt the deck as well. They've suddenly done all this work on the property. Where did the money come from? Just a question, not overly significant in terms of where Lily and Jack are, but I thought it was something worth pointing out. It seems to me that there is another source of income on this property. Now I guess it's possible that Daniel's uncle, who also works at the timber mill, may have got the additional timber for them to use on the property. But I would imagine even if you work at the place, you would still have to pay for it. Okay, I'm going to move on and play another clip.
So I went up and I did this whole area, this whole wooded area, right up to the top of the dirt road, came back down here and came back down the side of the road, came back down here and came back up the same spot. I went back into the house. By the time the cops were here, I don't know exactly what time, I didn't take my phone.
It's interesting here that she points out that she doesn't know what time that she came back and the cops were here because she didn't take her phone. Here's the thing. We know that the call was made at 10 a.m. According to Daniel and Malaya, they think the kids had only been gone for 20 minutes. When they called the RCMP, although that you had this 8 o'clock story. But you also have Malaya claiming that she instantly rang 911. Now, Janie's story in terms of heading up the track and searching was that she headed up the hill, she ran into Daniel up the top. He said, "Do you want to come with me?" Oh, she said, "Have you found them?" Because obviously couldn't you see that he didn't have them? She said, "No, I'm going to keep searching here." And she apparently went searching in the woods. And she was apparently gone for all this time. And she came back and the Mounties were there. But she doesn't know what time she got back and saw that the Mounties were there, because she didn't take her phone with her. Well, I wonder if, like Daniel, she's some kind of superhero, and she was also travelling at warp speed that day. Because according to her phone, she was on the phone at 10:19, which, if we're saying that Malaya made the call at 10 o'clock, that only gives her 20 minutes to go and all the way up to the top of the hill, have a conversation with Daniel up the top of the hill, head back down, search all around through the woods, and I believe she said she searched in their little fort on the way up as well, and she got back in time to take a phone call at 10:19. Even if, let's say, she headed out at 9:40, because that's when they may have discovered that the children were missing, and maybe Malaya waited 20 minutes to make that call. So, okay. That says maybe she was gone for 40 minutes before coming back and receiving that call on her phone, or making that call on her phone at 10:19. Because remember, she said she didn't take her phone with her. She forgot her phone. Now here's the thing. We know that the search was called at 10:44. Now, the Mounties have said they got there pretty quickly, but when you go back and listen to the dispatch audio, the earliest it appears that they were there was sometime after 20 past 10. I think from memory it comes up to like 10:24. But she didn't take her phone with her when she went searching. And yet when she came back, the Mounties were already there. But she has a phone call here on her phone, which occurred before the Mounties arrived. Make that make sense.
Right here in this area here. I plan on putting a pool up this year for the kids. You need level ground for a pool. That's what I was doing. I was leveling out the ground to set up the pool.
And this is the Thursday.
This is Thursday.
Right.
Friday, all the investigators, search and rescue and everything. Right around here was where they found the only footprint.
This is where the boot.
This is where I was raking that night. That's where the boot print was found. In the mud where I was raking.
Now, I've already said that I thought that the raking the mud for a swimming pool story seemed a little odd. But here's the thing. She is adamant that the boot print was found in the precise location that she was raking. And she is showing the reporter the precise location where she is raking. Now, we can get our bearing on that based on that mound of rocks that's up a little bit further back. And yes, I have looked at the images, and the mound of rocks is in all the images. I have no idea why there is that little mound of rocks there. It looks a bit like a can. If you don't know what a can is, it's like a memorial that you put for people who have died. You put a pile of rocks. It can also be used as markers by nomadic people, but generally it's a spiritual thing, and it's usually native people who do this. I do find it interesting to see this pile of rocks so very meticulously stacked up like that. But that does give us bearings in terms of where Janie claims she was raking and where Janie claims that the boot print was seen. Now, you may have also caught in the video that she was kind of standing between the pile of stones and that ladder that goes up the hill, closer to the stones than to the ladder. You can see there's some distance. The stones themselves are level with the corner of the house. I also just want to point out, you can see in the top left-hand corner there that they now have a camera on the corner of the house. So the location where Janie was standing is roughly where that little hand is pointing to. And you can see that the ground is a bit darker there, like it might have been a little bit muddy. Also, right next to the finger, but not quite in the location where she was standing, there is one spot that looks like a bit of a hole in the ground, like there was something there that needed to be covered up or something like that. But that's not where she was standing. She was standing much further along, closer to the mound of rocks, and on the edge of that wet patch, if it's a wet patch. Why am I pointing that out? So I'm going to go back to that driveway image in just a moment, but I want to point out this from the day that the interview was done with Janie first. You can see level with that can or pile of rocks, whatever it is a definite fresh patch of gravel there. Well, that would be in keeping with her story, right? That she was raking gravel in that location. even though that's not where she was standing when she was just doing the interview then. And maybe when you are standing at it, you don't notice it as readily. These sort of things, you kind of need to be standing a distance away to notice them. But here's the thing. That's not where she was raking. If we go back to that aerial view, and like I said, this is the oldest aerial view that we have, because it's got the wood pile there, you can see there is no fresh gravel between that rock pile and the house. That little patch of fresh gravel was put there for the benefit of the cameras. And it wasn't even where she was standing when she was saying, well, this is where I was raking the gravel. So, for starters, she wasn't raking gravel in that location. Yes, there's a darker patch further back that looks like a hole, but obviously it's a hole, it's not freshly raked gravel. Remember, this is from straight after the children went missing, before they moved the wood pile. So if we zoom in on this area, and this image is from around the time the children went missing, it appears that she was scraping around in the gravel directly near the RV, nowhere near the location that she is claiming to have been scraping around in the gravel during her interview. Now, I'm sorry, but unless the woman's got dementia, how could you possibly think that that location there is even remotely close to the location where she was standing during her interview? Seems to me like she has this raking gravel story, but it's not anywhere near where it appears that someone has been raking gravel. Now, while I've got you looking at this, I just want to point out something to do with the RV, and I'll come back to that later. But note the exhaust pipe thing that comes out the window and then goes right up and like up above the roof of the RV. And obviously there's soot on the ground from that as well. Just keep that in mind, because I'm going to come back to that. But I want to zoom out a bit and have a look at this area where the gravel has been disturbed. Although first, sorry, I forgot this part, I wanted to point out that it looks like something has been dragged from the RV towards that woodshed. I don't know if it is significant, and if it is significant, what the significance would be, but definitely something has been dragged across that ground there. And what's important to realise is that obviously it had only occurred a short while before that, because basically that is also the track where she goes across to feed her chickens, apparently. So that would have been worn down by her going across there several times during the day. So that is a fresh drag mark from her RV across towards the cubby house. Or maybe from the cubby house going towards the RV. I'm wondering if that has anything to do with her refusing to allow searchers into her RV at first. So I also just wanted to point out that in the area in front of the RV, from where that scraper thing is, across to the fence, there appears to be another heavier kind of drag mark. And yet she claims she was raking gravel further down the driveway. It seems like the spot that is uneven and has been most recently raked, most recently dragged, etc., is that spot directly in front of her fence. Now, like I said, maybe she's got dementia and she doesn't know where she was. But she makes a point of saying that she was raking the gravel in the precise spot where they then found the boot print the next day. And as you saw, where she was standing and talking to the interviewer is the location where the ground was a little bit soggy. The location where you probably would find a few boot prints. So, in terms of where you would find a boot print, then logically that spot makes sense. But as you saw, there's no evidence that she was doing any raking in that location prior to those children going missing. There was, as you saw, a darker patch in the driveway that looked like it was a bit of a hole that needed filling in, but it obviously hadn't been filled in prior to the children going missing. The only disturbances in the ground are the ones you see between her RV door and that gate and in front of her fence. I have to say, it could just be the angle. This is the second image that was taken. So this is the image that was taken after the wood pile was removed from beside the little cubby house. And like I said, it could just be the angle of the photo, but I cannot now see any drag marks from the RV to the gate. I'd really love to know when it was that CBC got that first image of the property. Did they get it from one of the search helicopters, or did they take their own helicopter out the day the children went missing? Because it seems that there was a bit of a quick clean-up straight after those children went missing. Okay, well that said, this is actually the second image again. So I believe that this is not the one from CBC, but this is one from after the children, like a few days after the children went missing, and I can still see those drag marks a little bit, but it does show you more clearly the drag marks or the scraping on the outside of the fence in front of like Janie's little yard. So if she was raking gravel, why is it that there does not appear to have been gravel raked in the area that she is indicating? While on the flip side, you have these areas that have been disturbed. Now, before I move on to the next clip, I wanted to show you this photo. So this is obviously a screenshot from her interview, and I wanted to point out the exhaust pipe that's coming out the window of the RV. It is no longer going straight up. It is just a single pipe that just comes straight out the window. So the riser bit is completely gone, which I find to be incredibly curious. I don't know if it has any importance whatsoever, but I did find it rather odd.
Thursday, they were in town. When they came home, I came out of the trailer. Jack was sitting beside the little playhouse, digging worms with Lily. Jack said, "Granny, I found a worm. Found a centipede."
Okay, you've already seen the image of the other side of the little cubby house, and it was piled up with wood. Behind it is a clay path. You wouldn't be digging for worms there. And on this side of it, you can see there's really, really long grass. There's no disturbance. It doesn't look like anyone's been digging there. But don't forget, that first photo I showed you, there was all that timber, which looks like they've just basically dumped it over the fence, there was all that timber right there next to the cubby house. And yet she's claiming that he was sitting next to the cubby house digging for worms. Well, looking at that soil, people have mentioned it was probably too cold to be digging for worms for starters. But that's a heavy clay soil. Unless it was muddy, you're not going to be digging for anything there, not a 4-year-old. Not unless you've got a crowbar. And by crowbar, I mean like a proper post-hole digging crowbar. One of those big 6-foot long poles that weigh probably about 10 kilo and require full strength of an adult to actually chip into that clay soil. I mean, seriously, a 4-year-old wouldn't even be able to lift one of those crowbars, let alone use it to dig into the ground. Like I said, you've got the wood pile on one side, you had all those planks of wood on this bottom side anyway. You've got heavy clay, you've got grass that is so thick that the only way you would find worms would be had it been raining quite a bit and the ground had softened up a bit and you were able to pull out a clump of grass and maybe find worms in the roots. That would be beyond a 4-year-old boy. So, as for Jack digging for worms, yeah, that's a lie too. So I'm going to finish off with this question. Why the need to lie about the children being on the swings and you watching them on the swings when clearly they weren't? Why the lie about digging for worms? Why the lie about raking gravel in a location where actually you weren't raking gravel? Even if maybe that was the location the boot print was found, the two could not have occurred in the same location. And then, if those things are lies, why would you need to lie anyway if you are concerned with helping out to try and find these 2 children who have now been missing for over 3 months? Now, before I finish, I just want to mention I do have an update in the Phoebe Bishop case. I do have more to share with regards to Jaden Spicer, and I do have more in relation to Sarah Grace and Leo Escalante. I lost half a day today because I had a new oven being installed, so I wasn't able to actually work on anything this morning. So my first video tomorrow will be Phoebe Bishop. I do want to come back and talk about more things to do with Lily and Jack, but if you are following Phoebe's case, keep an eye out for that video. Also keep an eye out for another video about Jaden, which I will hopefully get done tomorrow also, and I will also try and get a shorter Lily and Jack video done tomorrow. I will at the very least manage 2 of those videos. So, on that note, thanks for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit the like button. That gets these videos out into the algorithm, gets them seen by more people, helps my channel to grow. And of course, please leave a comment below. I know I haven't been keeping up with comments lately. I do read them. I just sometimes don't keep up. So on that note, thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.